The last light of the Vestan homeworld flickered across Ambassador Rayla's translucent body as she floated in the emergency transmission chamber. Her species resembled jellyfish made of living crystal, and they spoke through patterns of bioluminescence that rippled beneath their skin. For 3 days now, her glow had grown weaker. She had not rested. She had not eaten. She had only broadcast again and again into the uncaring void. "This is Ambassador Rayla of the Vestan Collective," she repeated for the 10,000th time. "We are facing extinction. The Harrow Swarm has entered our territory. We have no weapons. We have no defenses. We beg any who hear this message to help us." Behind her, through the viewport of the diplomatic vessel Gentle Dawn, she could see the distant flashes of light that meant another colony had fallen. 4 billion people on Thessa Minor, gone in a single night, harvested by machines that felt nothing and wanted only to grow. The Greater Galactic Assembly had existed for 12,000 years. It contained 847 species who had long ago decided that war was barbaric, that weapons were relics of primitive times. They had built a civilization of art and philosophy and peaceful coexistence. They had forgotten how to fight. Now they were learning what that choice cost. High Speaker Orvin contacted her from the assembly chambers, his ancient form appearing as a hologram beside her. He was a Velen, a species that looked like trees made of flowing water. He had lived for 6,000 years. He remembered things that others had forgotten. "Rayla," he said, his voice carrying the weight of millennia. "You must stop broadcasting toward the quarantine zone." "Why?" she asked. "Because it is forbidden? Because we agreed 200 years ago to pretend that sector of space does not exist. Because of what lives there." Rayla turned to face him fully. Her bioluminescence flared with something the Vestan rarely felt. Anger. "I know what lives there," she said. "Humans. Deathworlders. Beings so violent that the Assembly chose to seal them away rather than risk contact. I have heard the stories, High Speaker. I have seen the recordings from First Contact. Then you know why we must not invite them into our space. I know that 4 billion of my people died last night while the Assembly debated whether to send a strongly worded protest to the swarm. I know that the Harrow machines cannot be reasoned with or bargained with or convinced to show mercy. I know that within 6 months, my entire species will be harvested unless someone fights for us." She moved closer to the hologram. Her glow pulsed with desperate intensity. "The humans are warriors, High Speaker. That is exactly what we need." Orvin was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that might have been shame. "The quarantine will remain in place. The Assembly has voted. I am sorry, Rayla." The hologram flickered and died. Rayla floated alone in the chamber. Around her, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the Harrow swarm was moving closer, consuming everything in its path. She turned back to the transmission array. The quarantine zone lay in the direction of a small yellow star that humans called Sol. It was marked on every galactic chart with the same warning: Deathworld origin and no contact. 200 years ago, the first human vessel had emerged from fold space and made contact with the Assembly. The meeting had been peaceful at first. Then a Thessan diplomat had reached toward a human in greeting, and the human had reacted on instinct. In 1 second, the human had moved faster than any Assembly species could track, grabbed the diplomat's appendage, and twisted it into a submission hold. The human had apologized immediately. It was reflex, they explained. Their world was dangerous. They had evolved to react to potential threats without thinking. The Assembly had seen enough. A species that responded to a friendly gesture with combat reflexes. A species from a world where the gravity crushed bones, the atmosphere burned lungs, and every other creature was either predator or prey. A species that had spent its entire history fighting and killing and surviving through violence. They were too dangerous to integrate. The quarantine was established. The humans were forgotten. Until now. Rayla adjusted the transmission array to its maximum range. She began broadcasting again, this time with a new message. "This is Ambassador Rayla of the Vestan Collective, broadcasting to the human species. We know you can hear this. We know you have been listening to our communications for 200 years. We know you have ships and weapons beyond anything we can imagine. We are dying. 40 billion people will be harvested by machines that feel nothing. We cannot fight. We do not know how. But you do. She paused. Her glow had faded to almost nothing. She had only enough energy left for one more sentence. Please, help us. The message flew across the void toward quarantine space. On Earth, deep beneath the African continent, director Samira Okonkwo listened to the translation. She was a small woman with gray hair and steady hands. She had commanded the Interstellar Response Division for 30 years, waiting for a call that she never expected to receive. She made one phone call. "Wake the fleet," she said. In the asteroid belt beyond Mars, a structure the size of a small moon began to stir. Lights that had been dark for 2 centuries flickered on. Dark matter reactors hummed to life. Humanity had been waiting. And now, finally, someone had asked. Admiral David Reyes had spent 40 years preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now, watching the Prometheus yards come alive around him, he felt something he had not experienced since childhood. Fear, not a battle. Fear that they might arrive too late. The shipyard hung in the asteroid belt like a sleeping giant. It was larger than most moons, hollowed out over generations to house the greatest secret humanity had ever kept. While the galaxy believed Earth was a quarantine backwater, the people of that small blue world had been building 200 warships, each one powered by a harnessed singularity, each one armed with weapons that bent the laws of physics. Dark matter cannons that could tear holes in reality itself. Fold space engines that laughed at the speed of light. Armor made from materials that did not exist in nature. The assembly thought they had locked humanity away. In truth, they had given humanity 200 years to prepare. All reactors at full power, reported Captain Yuki Tanaka from the bridge of the flagship DNV Consequence. She was young for a captain, barely 40, but she had earned her rank through brilliance rather than seniority. "The fleet is ready to move on your order, Admiral." Reyes studied the tactical display. 40 billion Thess and civilians. 6 days of travel through fold space. A machine swarm that had never been defeated. Commander Volkov, status of the strike wings? Alexei Volkov's voice crackled through the communication system. He commanded the fighter squadrons from his personal craft, a heavily modified interceptor he had built himself. "All wings report combat ready. My pilots are eager, Admiral. We have trained our whole lives for this." Dr. Sharma, the fleet's chief medical officer, responded from her hospital ship. "Medical facilities are prepared for mass casualties, Admiral. I have studied every piece of data we have on Thess and physiology. We can treat them if necessary." Reyes nodded slowly. His crew was ready. His ships were ready. But was he ready to send them to die? Director Okonkwo's face appeared on his private screen. She looked tired. The weight of this decision pressed down on both of them. "The Assembly will not welcome us," she said. High Speaker Orvin has already issued a statement condemning any breach of the quarantine. "They fear us, David. They have feared us since first contact." "I remember the recordings," Reyes replied. Lieutenant Morrison grabbed the Thessan diplomat. "Pour reflex." The diplomat was not hurt, but the Assembly saw a predator. They saw what we could do if we chose to be violent, and they decided we were too dangerous to live among them. Yes, Reyes let out a long breath. They were not entirely wrong. We are dangerous. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our evolution. We learn to fight before we learn to speak. Violence is in our blood, but so is compassion, Okonkwo said. So is the need to protect. That is what they never understood. She leaned closer to the screen. 200 years ago, we could have forced our way into the Assembly. Our technology was already beyond theirs. We could have conquered half the galaxy before they organized a response. But we chose to wait. We chose to build defenses instead of weapons of conquest. We chose to prepare for the day when someone would need us. And now someone does. Yes, the question is whether you are willing to die for people who rejected us. Reyes thought about that question. He thought about his grandfather, who had served in the first human fleet. He thought about his mother, who had designed the dark matter reactors. He thought about generations of humans who had worked and sacrificed and prepared all for this moment. They are afraid of us, he finally said. They are afraid because they do not understand us. They think violence and compassion cannot exist in the same heart. They think that because we can kill, we must want to kill. He stood straighter. We're going to show them what we really are. We protect. That is what humans do. We protect our families, our friends, our neighbors. And today, the vestan are our neighbors. Okonkwo smiled. It was a sad smile, but also proud. Then go, Admiral. Show the galaxy what humanity truly is. The communication ended. Reyes opened a channel to the entire fleet. 200 ships, 50,000 crew members. The largest military force humanity had ever assembled. All hands, this is Admiral Reyes. In a few hours, we will breach the quarantine that has separated us from the galaxy for 2 centuries. We will enter a war we did not start, against an enemy we have never seen, to save people who fear us. He paused. Some of us will not return. I will not lie to you about that. But every one of you knew this day might come. Every one of you chose to serve anyway. Because that is who we are. We are the shield that guards the helpless. We are the sword that strikes down those who prey on the innocent. Around him, the fleet began to move. Dark matter engines bent space itself, creating tunnels through reality. The vestan asked for help. Humanity answers. Fleet, move out. 200 warships vanished into fold space. The galaxy was about to remember why it had feared humanity, and learn why it should have hoped for them instead. When a human fleet tore through reality above Vestan Prime, Ambassador Rayla felt her heart stop. She had called for help. She had begged for warriors to save her people, but nothing had prepared her for this. 200 ships emerged from fold space in perfect formation. They were angular and predatory, built for war in ways that the peaceful assembly could not understand. Their hulls seemed to drink in starlight, covered in materials darker than the void itself. And they were huge. The smallest human vessel dwarfed the largest vestan cargo hauler. Vestan Collective, this is Admiral David Reyes of the United Earth Fleet. A voice crackled through her communication system. It was calm and steady. We received your transmission. We are here to help. Rayla's bioluminescence flickered with emotions she could not name. Relief, terror, hope, all of them at once. Admiral Reyes, she managed to say. I am Ambassador Rayla. Thank you for coming. How much time do we have? She checked her tactical data with trembling appendages. The Harrow Swarm will reach Vestan Prime in 18 hours. They have already consumed 4 colony worlds. 12 billion of my people are dead. There was a pause on the human end. When Reyes spoke again, his voice carried something hard and cold. We will need everything you know about the swarm, every tactical observation, every piece of data you have gathered. I will send it immediately. Good. In the meantime, we are deploying ground forces to assist with evacuation. Do not be alarmed. My people are intense, but they will not harm you. Rayla watched as smaller vessels detached from the human warships and descended toward her dying world. Within hours, beings unlike anything she had ever seen walked among her people. Humans. They were solid in a way that felt wrong to Thestan's senses. Dense with muscle and bone, radiating heat like small furnaces. They moved with a predator's grace, always aware of their surroundings, always ready to react. Their eyes scanned constantly, tracking movement, assessing threats. And yet, Sergeant Rosa Mendez led her squad through the ruins of a Thessan city. The buildings had been designed for beings who floated rather than walked, all curves and spirals in open spaces. Half of them had collapsed when the swarm's advanced scouts passed through. Spread out, she ordered her team. Search pattern Delta. We're looking for survivors, not hostiles. Weapons ready, but safety's on. These people are scared enough without us pointing guns at them. They found them huddled in basements and shelters. Thessan families, their bioluminescence dimmed with fear and exhaustion. Most of them recoiled when they saw the humans. The stories they had heard for 200 years filled their minds with terror. Mendez knelt down to their level. She kept her hands visible and her movements slow. "It is okay," she said softly. The translator in her helmet converted her words into patterns of light that the Thess could understand. "We are here to help you. Can you walk? We have transports waiting to take you somewhere safe." An elder Thess drifted forward. Her glow was almost gone. She had used all her energy, keeping the young ones calm. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you help us? We locked you away. We feared you. We treated you as monsters." Mendez smiled. It was a gentle smile, one she usually saved for her younger siblings back on Earth. "Because you needed help. That is all that matters." They found the child 3 hours later. The young Thess, barely more than a hatchling, had become separated from their family group during the evacuation. They floated in the ruins of what had once been a school, their small body dark with terror. Mendez approached slowly. The child tried to flee but was too weak to move quickly. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey, little one. It is okay. I am not going to hurt you." The child did not respond. Their glow had gone completely dark. Mendez sat down in the rubble. She removed her helmet so the child could see her face. Then she did the only thing she could think of. She began to hum. It was an old lullaby. Her grandmother had sung it to her when she was small and frightened. The melody was simple, rising and falling like gentle waves. She did not know if the child could even hear it. Sound was not how Thessan communicated, but music was universal. After an hour, the child's glow began to return. Faint at first, then stronger. They drifted closer to Mendez, drawn by something they did not understand. This creature, this being from a world of violence and death, was offering them comfort. "There you go," Mendez whispered. "There you go. My name is Rosa. What is yours?" "A flicker of light. A pattern. Pelin. That is a good name. Come on, Pelin. Let us find your family." The child reached out with a small appendage and wrapped it around Mendez's armored hand. Above them, the human fleet prepared for war. Admiral Reyes studied the tactical data that Rayla had provided. The Harrow swarm was vast. 40,000 units. Each one a machine designed for a single purpose. Consume organic matter. Build more machines. Spread. They adapt quickly, Captain Tanaka observed. Every engagement makes them stronger. "Then we hit them hard and fast," Reyes replied. "No warning. No mercy. We end this before they learn to counter us." On the surface, Pelin clung to Sergeant Mendez as she carried them toward the evacuation shuttle. The swarm was coming, and humanity stood ready. The first Harrow unit died without understanding what had killed it. One moment, it was part of the swarm, connected to 40,000 other machines in a vast computational network. The next moment, a beam of dark matter punched through its hull and tore it apart at the molecular level. Then more beams came. Hundreds of them. Thousands. Captain Yuki Tanaka watched her tactical display with cold satisfaction. The human fleet had caught the swarm in open space, far from any cover. Dark matter cannons fired in synchronized volleys, each shot precise, each impact devastating. "First wave eliminated," her tactical officer reported. 800 units destroyed in the opening salvo. "Keep firing. Do not let them regroup." The swarm had never encountered resistance like this. For centuries, they had swept across the galaxy, consuming everything in their path. Organic civilizations ran. They hid. They begged. They died. They did not fight back. The humans fought back. Admiral Reyes commanded the battle from the DNV steadfast, his voice calm and steady as he directed 200 warships against an enemy that outnumbered them 200 to 1. "Strike wings, target the larger units. Those are the coordination nodes. Take them out, and the smaller units lose efficiency." Commander Volkov led his fighters into the heart of the swarm formation. His pilots were the best humanity had produced, trained since childhood for exactly this kind of combat. They wove through the machine units like predators through a herd, striking and retreating before the swarm could respond. "Got another node," Volkov reported. "That is 12 down. The machines in this sector are getting sluggish." "Good work. All ships, press the attack." For 3 hours, the battle seemed to favor humanity. The swarm lost units by the thousands. Their formations scattered. Their coordination faltered. Then they began to adapt. The first sign was a new type of unit, smaller and faster, designed specifically to counter human fighter tactics. Then came armor modifications that partially deflected dark matter beams. Then coordinated attacks that targeted human engines instead of weapons. Admiral, the swarm is learning, Tanaka warned. Our effectiveness is dropping. Reyes saw it too. The kill ratio was shifting. Where one human shot had destroyed 10 machines before, now it took 3 shots to kill 5. The math was turning against them. They are a hive mind, Dr. Sharma said over the medical channel. Her hospital ship was already treating wounded from damaged vessels. Every engagement teaches them. Every death makes them smarter. Can we win through attrition? No, I'll admit it. They can build new units faster than we can destroy them. If this becomes a war of numbers, we lose. Reyes studied the tactical display. Somewhere in that mass of machines was a central processing node, the brain of the swarm. If they could destroy it, the individual units would lose their coordination. They would become stupid, operating on basic programming alone. Volkov, I need you to find me a target. Understood, Admiral. Going in. On the surface of Thesson Prime, the battle had a different face. Sergeant Mendez held her position at the entrance to a refugee corridor. Behind her, thousands of Thessan civilians streamed toward evacuation shuttles. In front of her, swarm infiltration units pressed forward relentlessly. Her rifle grew hot in her hands. She had stopped counting kills hours ago. Hold the line, she shouted to her squad. Do not let a single machine through. A Thessa medic drifted up beside her, tending to a wounded Marine. The medic's bioluminescence pulsed with fear, but their hands were steady. Why do you do this? The medic asked. Why do you die for us? Mendez fired another burst. Another machine fell. Because you cannot defend yourselves, she said. And we can. But we rejected you. We called you monsters. Yeah, you did. She reloaded and kept firing. Ask me if I care. Above them, the battle in space reached a crisis point. Volkov found a central processing node. It was massive, a structure built from harvested metal and organic components, pulsing with computational power that coordinated millions of machines across a dozen star systems. His fighter was crippled getting there. Life support failing. Weapons offline. He had enough power for one last transmission. Admiral, I found it. Transmitting coordinates now. The node is at the center of their formation, heavily defended. You will need to punch through with everything you have. Volkov, get out of there. Engines are gone, sir. It has been an honor. The transmission ended. Reyes stared at the coordinates on his display. The center of the swarm formation. The most heavily defended point in the entire battle. Getting there would cost ships. Getting there would cost lives. Captain Tanaka's voice came through the command channel. Admiral, the consequence can make it. We have the speed and the armor. Give me covering fire, and I will destroy that node. Tanaka, that is a suicide mission. Yes, sir. It is. But if we do not destroy that node, everyone on Thesson Prime dies. 40 billion people. I could do the math. Reyes closed his eyes. He thought of his grandfather. He thought of every generation of humans who had prepared for this moment. All ships cover the consequence. Whatever it takes. The human fleet surged forward. 3 ships fell in the first minute. The DNV Resilience took a direct hit to her reactor and vanished in a flash of light. The DNV Fortitude rammed a formation of swarm units to clear a path. The DNV Morningstar sacrificed herself to draw fire away from the flagship. Tanaka did not slow down. The consequence dove toward the heart of the swarm, her dark matter cannons blazing, her hull taking hit after hit. Damage reports scrolled across her screens. Deck 3 gone. Deck 7 gone. Engine 2 offline. She did not stop. The processing node grew larger in her view screen. Around her, the last of her escort ships fell away, burning. All non-essential crew, abandon ship, she ordered. This is your captain. Get to the escape pods. Now, 47 people stayed. The consequence hit the processing node at full speed, her dark matter core overloading in a controlled cascade. The explosion tore through the swarm's central brain, destroying not just the node, but every connection it had built over centuries. Across the battle, 40,000 machines went dark. Captain Yuki Tanaka died, saving a species that had once rejected her own, and the swarm began to fall. Silence spread across the battlefield like a wave. One moment, 40,000 machines moved with terrible purpose. The next moment, they simply stopped. Admiral Reyes stared at his tactical display, watching the swarm units drift aimlessly through space. Without their central processing node, they had reverted to basic programming. They could move. They could defend themselves if attacked. But they could no longer coordinate. They could no longer think. All ships, commence cleanup operations, he ordered. His voice was hollow. Destroy every remaining unit. Leave nothing alive. The human fleet moved through the debris field methodically. Dark matter cannons fired in steady rhythm. Machine after machine fell, each death meaningless now, each destruction merely housekeeping. Admiral, Captain Tanaka's first officer spoke from the Consequence's last escape pod. His voice was thick with grief. The captain, she stayed on the bridge. She said someone needed to guide the ship in. She said, I know what she said, Reyes replied. I know what she did. The entire galaxy will know. On the surface of Thessin Prime, Sergeant Mendez emerged from the ruins of the refugee corridor. Her armor was scarred and blackened. 3 members of her squad had not survived the night. But behind her, thousands of Thessan civilians were still alive. Little Pelin floated beside her, their small appendage still wrapped around her hand. They had refused to leave her side during the entire battle. Is it over? Pelin asked. Their bioluminescence flickered with exhaustion. Almost, little one. Almost. The last swarm unit on the surface fell to a Marine sniper an hour later. Across the 3 Thessan worlds, the story was the same. The machines had stopped. The evacuation could become recovery. The dying could become healing. Dr. Sharma worked for 3 days without sleep. Her hospital ship overflowed with wounded from both species. Human Marines with shattered bones and burns. Thessan civilians with damage to their crystalline bodies that she barely understood. She learned as she worked. Thessan physiology was nothing like human biology, but medicine was medicine. The principles remained the same. Stop the bleeding. Fight infection. Give the body time to heal. Doctor, we are running low on plasma, her assistant reported. Sharma checked her supplies. The battle had been more costly than anyone had predicted. For human ships, lost with all hands. Hundreds of wounded from the ships that survived. Her stocks were nearly depleted. Human plasma can work as a temporary substitute for Thessan, she said. The proteins are compatible enough. Start asking for volunteers among the crew. Within an hour, human Marines were lined up outside the medical bay, rolling up their sleeves. Ambassador Rayla watched this from the observation deck of the Gentle Dawn. Humans, the monsters of galactic legend, giving their blood to save people who had once feared them. I do not understand, she said to Admiral Reyes when he came aboard for a diplomatic meeting. We rejected you. We locked you away. We called you violent and dangerous and unworthy of civilized contact. Why would you sacrifice so much for us? Reyes was tired. He had not slept since the battle began. He had lost friends. He had ordered people to their deaths. But he answered her question with patience. Because you asked for help. That cannot be enough. There must be more. Some strategic advantage. Some resource you want. Some territory you plan to claim. No. Rayla's bioluminescence flickered with confusion. Then why? Reyes walked to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, the debris of the Consequence drifted forever, carrying the remains of 47 humans who had died for strangers. 200 years ago, your assembly decided that we were too dangerous to live among you. You looked at our reflexes, our aggression, our capacity for violence, and you saw only monsters. You are not entirely wrong. We are violent. We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. We learned to fight before we learned to speak. He turned back to face her. But violence is a tool, Ambassador. Like any tool, it can be used for destruction or protection. Your assembly chose to abandon the tool entirely. You decided that peace was better than the risk of war. And for 12,000 years, that worked. Until the swarm. Until the swarm. Until you faced an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be negotiated with, could not be convinced to show mercy. Then your philosophy of peace became a death sentence. Rayla dimmed with shame. We were fools. No, you were hopeful. There is nothing wrong with hoping that violence can be left behind. But hope is not a strategy. Someone has to be willing to fight when fighting becomes necessary. Someone has to be willing to stand between the innocent and the things that would destroy them. And that someone is humanity. Reyes smiled. It was a sad smile, weighted with loss. We do not fight because we love violence, Ambassador. We fight because we love what we are protecting. My people died today defending yours. Captain Tanaka, Commander Volkov, 300 others. They did not die because they wanted to kill. They died because they could not stand by and watch the innocent suffer. He straightened his uniform. That is what your assembly never understood about us. Yes, we are dangerous. Yes, we can kill. But we choose what we kill for. We choose to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Rayla was silent for a long moment. Her glow pulsed with something that might have been understanding. I think, she said slowly, that we owe you a great apology. You owe us nothing, Ambassador. You asked for help. We came. That is all. The cleanup operations continued for a week. Every swarm unit was destroyed. Every piece of debris was cataloged. Every body, human and Thessan alike, was recovered for proper burial. And in the halls of the Greater Galactic Assembly, High Speaker Orvin faced a question that would reshape civilization. What do you do when your monsters turn out to be your saviors? 6 months after the Battle of Thessan Prime, Ambassador Rayla stood before the full assembly of the Greater Galactic Assembly. 847 species watched her, their representatives filling the vast chamber with a rainbow of bodies and bioluminescences and forms that defied description. She had rehearsed this speech 100 times. Now, facing the gathered leaders of galactic civilization, she threw her notes away. I came here to give you a report, she began. Statistics about the battle, numbers of casualties, tactical analysis of a human fleet. But I realize now that none of that matters. What matters is what I saw, what I experienced, what I learned. She turned to look at the human delegation. Admiral Reyes sat among them, his dress uniform crisp and white. Sergeant Mendez was there too, little Pelin floating beside her. The child had refused to be separated from the human who had saved their life. 200 years ago, we decided that humanity was too dangerous to live among us. We saw their reflexes, their aggression, their capacity for violence, and we were afraid. So we locked them away and tried to forget they existed. Her bioluminescence pulsed with emotion. We were wrong. A murmur rippled through the assembly. High Speaker Orvin watched from his podium, his ancient form flowing with something that might have been hope. Yes, humans are violent, Rayla continued. Yes, they evolved on a world that made them into warriors. Yes, they have the capacity to destroy, but they also have the capacity to protect, to sacrifice, to die for strangers who never did anything for them but fear and reject them. She pointed to Mendez. That woman sat in the ruins of a destroyed school and hummed a lullaby to a terrified child who could not even hear the music. She stayed because the child was afraid. She fought through the entire battle with one hand because the child would not let go of the other. She pointed to Reyes. That man lost 4 ships and 300 people. He sent Captain Yuki Tanaka to her death, knowing it was the only way to save my world. He carries that weight every day, and he would do it again without hesitation. Rayla turned to face the assembly directly. The humans did not come to conquer us. They came to save us. They asked for nothing in return. When I asked Admiral Reyes why, he said 4 words, because you asked. She paused to let that sink in. That is who they are. Not monsters. Not threats. Protectors. They spent 200 years in isolation, and instead of plotting revenge, they built a fleet to defend people they had never met. That is not the behavior of dangerous animals. That is the behavior of guardians. High Speaker Orvin rose from his podium. His voice resonated through the chamber. Ambassador Rayla speaks truth. I have lived for 6,000 years. I remember the first contact with humanity. I remember the fear that drove our decision to quarantine them. I was one of those who voted for that quarantine. He bowed his great head. I was wrong. We were all wrong. And for 200 years, we let our fear blind us to what humanity truly is. Today, I call for a vote. The quarantine must end. Earth must be invited to join the assembly as a full member. The vote was not close. Species after species cast their support. The fear that had held for 2 centuries broke like ice in spring. Director Okonkwo arrived from Earth to sign the treaty. She brought a gift, a small box of seeds from plants that grew only on the human homeworld. These are from my garden, she explained to Orvin. On Earth, we plant seeds when we want something new to grow. I thought it was appropriate. The memorial was unveiled at the site of the battle. It floated in space where the consequence had made her final charge, a monument of crystal and light that listed every name of every human who had died defending the vestan. Captain Yuki Tanaka, Commander Alexei Volkov, 300 others who had given everything for people they had never known. Sergeant Mendez attended the ceremony with Pelin still at her side. The child had become her shadow, refusing to return to their own family for more than a few hours at a time. Eventually, Mendez had stopped trying to send them away. You saved me, Pelin explained when asked why they stayed. In my culture, that creates a bond that cannot be broken. You're my guardian now. Where you go, I go. Mendez looked down at the small crystalline being who had attached themselves to her. 6 months ago, she had been a Marine sergeant who had never fired a shot in anger. Now she was a hero of 2 species and the adopted guardian of an alien child. Well, she said with a smile, I guess I better learn to cook vestan food. Admiral Reyes met with Orvin one final time before returning to Earth. The ancient being had a question that had troubled him since the battle. Why did you come? Truly, you could have let us die. You owed us nothing. We had rejected you, feared you, treated you as less than civilized. Why would you sacrifice so much for us? Reyes thought for a long moment before answering. Because that is what humans do. We protect. It is written into our blood, our history, our very souls. We cannot look at the helpless and turn away. We cannot watch the innocent suffer and do nothing. When you called for help, we had only one possible response. He stood to leave. You spent 200 years fearing what we could destroy. Now you know what we can protect. The quarantine kept you safe from our violence, but it also kept you safe from our compassion. I hope, in the future, you will accept both. Orvin watched him go. For the first time in 6,000 years, the ancient being felt something that might have been humility. On Thesson Prime, reconstruction continued. Human engineers worked beside Thesson builders, combining technologies in ways neither species had imagined. Children played in the ruins, human and Thesson together, their laughter carrying across the rebuilding city. Ambassador Rayla visited the memorial one last time before returning to diplomatic duties. She placed a Thesson mourning crystal beside the human offerings, a small gesture of respect for those who had died. She thought of Captain Tanaka, guiding her ship into the heart of the swarm. She thought of Mendez, humming in the darkness while a frightened child clung to her. She thought of Admiral Reyes, standing firm while his people died for strangers. They had asked for help. Humanity had answered, and the galaxy would never be the same.